Hi, Claudia here from Create with Claudia, and today's project is going to be a really fun Christmas table runner. And it's based on this, it was actually inspired by this quilt I made a few years ago. This was a really fun and easy quilt I made. It's a rickrack quilt. I call it my rickrack Christmas quilt, which is a mouthful to say. I posted it on my Instagram account about a year ago, right around Christmas, and I got a lot of really good feedback on it. And I thought, you know what, this would be a fun one to do for a video. It's quick, it's easy, but I also didn't feel like doing another quilt, so I decided to make it a table runner. So when I show you the table runner, the sizes are adjusted a little bit, but I just wanted to show you what this table runner pattern was inspired by. But let me show you what we're going to be making today. This is the table runner. And again, it is very easy to make, and I will show these specifications and everything you need. You'll see them up on the screen, as well as I'm going to tell you what we need. This is a table runner that measures 12.5 inches wide by 41 inches long. So it's a nice large size. You can, again, pattern is so easy to adjust. You could add another row of blocks here and make it 4 across. If you wanted a bigger one, you could make a smaller one. In fact, today for the demonstration, I'm actually going to just be showing you a small piece because it would take too long on the video to show you the entire table runner. But this is what we're making. It's really cute, and in this case, what you're going to need are the following. You're going to need squares of fabric. You're going to need 30 of them, cut 4.5 inches square. So again, 30 squares cut 4.5 inches square. You're going to need 30 of those, various colors for Christmas, greens, reds. I mean, you know, it's up to you, whatever you want to use. You're going to need backing and batting. Now, I use a thin batting for my table runners. I prefer that. It's up to you, but I really prefer. It's also easier to sew, especially with when you add the rickrack. You're going to get a lot of layers in there. But you're going to cut a piece of batting about 15 inches by 45 inches. That's going to give you a nice big overhang. I am one that I like a nice big overhang around all 4 sides when I'm quilting, just, you know, in case I mess up. And then you're going to need a piece of backing fabric, 15 inches by 45 inches. And in this case, I use these cherries. Again, if you have lots of leftover squares, just use those. Whatever you want for the backing. So again, 30 squares, cut 4.5 inches square. You'll need batting, cut 15 inches by 45 inches, and backing, 15 inches by 45 inches. And then you're going to need the best part, the most interesting part, is the rickrack. And I buy it by the spool. And I bought this as a fair amount of rickrack I use because I'm going to make some more of these. So I went ahead and bought it. It's 25 yards. But for this project, you're going to need about 6 yards when all is said and done, going down and crisscrossing like that. About 6 yards of the rickrack, and mine, the size I use is 11 millimeters, and I use the color white. The cool thing is, if you look online, these come in all different colors, so you could really have fun with this. But again, it's 11 millimeters. You're going to need about 6 yards of it. And again, I like to give generous amounts just because there's nothing worse than getting caught short if you're running out of fabric or something like this. And so that's what you're going to need for the project. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to lay out how you want your table runner to look. And again, I'm making a small square. It's basically it's like a big 9 patch actually. You can put it as a little tabletop or a side tabletop or whatever you want for time purposes. But the table runner will of course be longer. And I just cut out greens and reds, and they are not necessarily Christmas. In fact, none of these are Christmas fabrics. I do have some, but not that I wanted to use for this. These are just really plain old greens and reds. It's amazing how you put green and red together, you automatically think Christmas. All right, and the first thing you're going to do is piece this little square together, these 9 squares together. So I'm going to show you the first one, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish, and I'll come back. Now I'm just going to show you, I mean, this is really simple straight stitching. I use a 1/4 seam allowance. I forgot to mention that, but you're going to use a 1/4 seam allowance. And basically you're just going to continue and sew them all together. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks. Okay, so I've done the rows, like so, and then I'm going to piece the rows together. So I'll be back in a second after I'm done with those. Actually, I would press these first. I should correct myself. I should press these first and then sew them together. Okay, so you probably already noticed I do like to pin where the seams are going to match. It just makes my pieces a little bit sharper. Just when you're sewing down the line and finishing up your block, watch the pins when you're sewing. But you don't have to. That's how I like to sew though. I sort of nest those two seams in together so you have nice sharp points. Okay. So now I'm going to press that open and then we're ready to add the rickrack. Now with this process, basically you're quilting when you add the rickrack. You don't add the rickrack right now. You're going to put the backing and the batting on first. Layer with the backing and the batting. But that's how basically you're quilting this table runner together. So I've already cut a piece of batting and a piece of backing that are the right size for this. Again, I use a nice thin batting, and this size is just for demo purposes, although this is going to be a great little sort of side table runner, or a little table topper. And I just used for the backing this old Christmas fabric I had that I never really could find a use for. So we're going to go ahead and layer that. You're going to lay your backing fabric wrong sides up, because you're making your little sort of quilt sandwich, that's what they call it. And then you're going to lay on and smooth out your batting on top of that. And then you're going to put your runner on top like so. And you have a nice little overhang, I like, again, a generous overhang. Not everybody does, but that's how I do it. And you're going to smooth that all together so it sort of fits snugly. And the batting actually helps it so it doesn't slide so much. And then you're ready to add the rickrack. And I will show you how to do that with one strip. You're going to take it on the spool, leave it on the spool. Now you can see here what's a little folded. Don't worry about that. You can iron that out later. And you're going to need pins for this. And I like to do a little bit of an overhang, only because, you know, in case I make a mistake, it just sort of helps. That's just how I am. And you're going to place it directly over this seam. So you're using the rickrack to cover your seams and quilt the piece together. Now, it may sound like it's hard to sew down the center of the rickrack, but it really isn't. It's wide enough that you can just sort of follow along and make a straight line. If you're ambitious, I am not, you could follow the waves of the rickrack, but I just like a straight stitching, just how I am. So let's go ahead and pin this, and I only pin one strip of it at a time. And you want to get through all the layers. Watch your fingers. I don't know, I always have a tendency to prick my fingers with pins. And now you're also gonna, while you're sewing, you're not just gonna rely on these pins. It does take a little bit longer to sew because you are gonna try and feed that through nice and straight. This is just to keep the rickrack sort of straight and keep it in place. Also smooth out while you're doing it. All right, last but not least, pin that. And then I trim, again leaving just a little bit of an overhang. which will get cut away later. There's no worries there. All right, and then we're ready to sew. Now you can use whatever thread you want. In my machine today I have like a pale gray. You could use white. You could even use, hey, if you're brave, you can use red or green. That would be really pretty to add another design dimension. My stitching isn't the smoothest all the time, so I'm not gonna do that, but it's completely up to you. And you're gonna basically start here. You definitely wanna back stitch because this is pretty tough, and it won't be, you know, you're gonna have these little edges over it once it's sewn, so there might be a little pulling, you never know. So I definitely back stitch at the beginning and at the end. And all right, we'll get going. So put it in your machine. Okay, and I start right at the end, and I actually go ahead and put my needle down just to get going. And you just want to keep checking underneath to make sure you're right above that seam line. That way it's nice and covered. And then you're going to slowly stitch down, right, trying to sort of estimate or guesstimate where that seam line is, and it should be right down the center of that rickrack. And I stop every once in a while to check, and then I'm going to pull out this next needle. You don't want to sew over the needles with this. It's really bulky at this point. The nice thing about this is it's pretty forgiving. If you're not exactly on the seam line, nobody's going to notice, and I won't tell anybody. All right, so I back stitched there. Oops. Take it out of the machine, and there you have your rickrack, and it is added. Now I used gray, only so you could maybe see it a little bit. I normally probably would have used white with this. Again, you can sort of see where I moved. It's not precisely straight. That's why if you're a great seamstress and you sew really great straight lines, I think red or green would be really pretty with using thread, but I would have used white with this. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the rickrack, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm coming up at the end of the adding the rickrack, and it's pretty nice and even. All right, so there you have it. This would be the whole table runner. I think this looks adorable. I really love this. I can see this in all kinds of colors, and actually I made another one which I'm going to show you when this is all done. But basically at this point you're going to bind it, cut it off, you know, bind it however you'd like to bind it. You can see in the one I already made, I used just a simple green. In fact, I ran out, so I used 2 different greens, but you barely know. But this is basically how you do it and how you add the rickrack. I forgot to mention this is a polyester rickrack. I don't know if I've ever seen 100% cotton rickrack, but this is what I used. And when you cut it off, you are going to cut off these little tails here. You're just going to use your rotary cutter and square this off, and then you bind it like you would your other table runners. I'm not going to show you that today. So that's how you add the rickrack, and then it's quilted on the back. like so. You probably can't see it real well, but that's basically, adding the rickrack is the way you quilt the table runner together. And then I decided, since I was making one, to make a summer one. I think this turned out, I actually love the way this turned out. I'm really excited about this one. I used really bright sort of jewel tones, and the white really pops, I think, on this one. This could be even for Easter. I also thought for Easter you could make one with really pale yellows and lavenders and blues and greens. And again, maybe using like pink rickrack or blue rickrack. I think that'd be really pretty for Easter. And can you imagine this in fall colors like browns and golds and rusts? With maybe even a cream colored or a brown rickrack, that would be really pretty too. So there's my rickrack table runner. I do hope you get a chance to make it. It's lots of fun. It's also really easy, and it would make a really good Christmas gift or whatever gift. So I hope you get a chance to make it. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.